Perceptions of Law Enforcement and the Media. Research presentation by Alexa Foy, Jenna Lanzetta, Keelan Guerin, Emily Switolski, and Brandon Pichal. Introduction. Why this study? This research suggests that there is an important relationship between the manner in which citizens are treated and positive perceptions towards police. As stated by Lovrich, Rezig, and Coria in their 1996 journal article titled Public Perceptions of State Police, an analysis of individual level and contextual variables. Dowler and Zwolicki conducted a study in 2007 of the media and how it portrays policing. They concluded that a relationship is in fact present between the media and law enforcement. The purpose of their study was to test the impact that media consumption had on the attitudes towards misconduct and discrimination. Their findings showed that individuals who constantly viewed news networks were more likely to believe that police misconduct was a common occurrence, especially for minority respondents. From these findings, we feel that those exposed to news coverage will have negative views on law enforcement.
Criticism of the police in the news discourages and frames in the news media's coverage of the Norwegian Bureau for the Investigation of Police Affairs, an article written by Allerin and Pollock in 2014 that states, one of Norway's leading dailies had the following front-page headline: Rarely punished, the Bureau for Investigation of Police Affairs drops nearly all its cases. The failure of the Bureau to react quickly leads to questions of closing ranks and insufficient distance between the police and investigators. Furthermore, accusations of police abuse and wrongdoing being treated with the kid gloves are frequent. What we took from this article was that slow reactions lead to negative views of the law enforcement. Guilty on all accounts. Law and Order's impact on public perception of law and order. An article written by Poldas in 2008 that states, each episode concludes with the restoration of, or periodically the thought-out attempt to restore law and order. The prosecution almost always solves the case and is confirmed correct, even in the rare instances where the wrongdoer escapes punishment. From this article, we predict that watching dramatized shows on law enforcement, it will lead to positive perceptions of the law enforcement. Hypothesis. Exposure to a dramatized law enforcement television show will result in a more positive perception of law enforcement than being exposed to television news coverage on law enforcement.
Methods. Participants. We recruited our participants through various medias, but mostly through Facebook and email. Through using these specific medias, a combination of snowball and convenient sampling was used. As we posted our link to our potential participants, if they did not feel like answering or were unable to, they did not, making it a convenient sample. However, when others would share or forward our survey, it made it snowball sampling as well. 105 people took our survey on Qualtrics. However, 27 people did not complete the survey, entirely forcing us to eliminate those participants. After eliminating them, our sample size was now 78. Materials. For our survey, we required 2 videos to show our participants. After our participants answered a series of questions, they were shown one of the 2 possible videos and were chosen at random. Then they were asked the same series of questions. One video was an episode of Law and Order Special Victims Unit, and the other was a news coverage including law enforcement. Both of these videos depicted a suspect being tased by law enforcement. Procedure. Our survey was administered through Qualtrics, an online survey software, and our participants were directed to the survey by clicking on the link we sent. They were asked a series of questions and then shown a short clip. The survey took about 4 minutes to complete.
Measures.
Our participants were asked to answer a series of statements on their perceptions of law enforcement. After they were directed to a video, they were asked the same 7 statements based on Webb and Marshall's 1995 Likert type scales. These measures varied from strongly disagree to strongly agree. When asked to perceive these statements, we were able to gauge the overall perceptions of our participants on law enforcement. Examples of statements we used were police officers are honest and police officers are respectful towards people like me. After they responded to these statements, we were able to see a direction in perception. According to Cronbach's Alpha, our findings were extremely reliable due to a value of 0.882. Results. To test the hypothesis that exposure to a dramatized law enforcement television show will result in a more positive perception of law enforcement than being exposed to a television news coverage on law enforcement, an independent samples t-test was conducted. Results indicated that those who were exposed to a dramatized law enforcement television show had a mean of 3.6 and a standard deviation of 0.8, differed significantly from those who were exposed to television news coverage on law enforcement with a mean of 3.03 and a standard deviation of 0.78. Our t-value was equal to 3.17. Our p was less than 0.05 at 0.001, and our degrees of freedom were 76. Thus, the hypothesis was supported. From our results, we conclude that exposure to dramatized television shows like Law & Order Special Victims Unit will result in a positive perception of law enforcement compared to the negative view through news coverage of law enforcement. With a significance level of 0.001, our hypothesis can be supported, and the Cronbach's alpha of 0.882 makes our results reliable.
Summary. From our results, we were able to support our hypothesis. Exposure to a dramatized episode of television will result in a more positive perception of law enforcement than being exposed to news coverage on television, and found our results extremely reliable through Cronbach Alpha. Implications. There were several implications that skewed our data. Gender differences, due to the way in which society shapes our perceptions of women as more passive and less aggressive than men. Of our 78 participants, 5 of them identified as men, while 73 of them identified as women. Race, because the Law & Order clip only displayed 2 individuals of the same race, while the news clip displayed several different racial groups. Limitations. Number of factors limited our data. Because of the 125 surveys attempted, only 78 of them were completed. Incorrect data due to false responses to the surveys and uncompleted surveys. One topic, meaning the topic of being tased by an officer. Clear intentions, because the video clip only displayed what the law enforcement officer's intention obviously was. And time constraints, because with more time to conduct and analyze more data and findings, the more accurate the results would have been.
Future research. For future research, administering the survey through media as well as in person would be beneficial. When using face-to-face surveying, you are able to control the participants in order to get an even number of male and females. Through using other ways of collecting data, it would change our sampling from convenience snowball to stratified random sampling. Using stratified random sampling would allow us to divide the population and receive more accurate data.